What I liked in the book were parts of your life that I've forgotten. The Hollywood canteen. I'd forgotten how that you were so involved in that.
Well, it's really the first time I've ever sort of written about the canteen. In, well, kind of a bragging way, actually. Because I've skipped it in other things I've written because it's not very nice to brag about yourself. But this time I decided it was an interesting story, the canteen, so it made a whole chapter.
You took, it was during the war, and you decided all the servicemen that were in Los Angeles.
Yes, they were never seeing stars.
Could never see stars.
They never were seeing stars.
So.
And Johnny Garfield one day suggested to me that we should do something about it. And we did. And 42 guilds and unions became part of it. It was an extraordinary thing. 2 groups of 3,000 men a night. Oh, it was incredible.
And the stars would serve them and dance with them.
Marlene Dietrich, for instance, was one of the most generous of all. And one night she came directly from the set of The Garden of Allah, all covered in gold paint. And the men, and not many clothes, just sort of gold paint. And the men went mad, absolutely mad, as they well should have, I agree.
But you... Now, the men went mad for you, too. You always say you didn't think you were attractive. You were a very sexy woman.
Oh, my God. Well, that makes me think of Miss Walter's special where she said to me, "Do you like sex?" Which rather alarmed me. And I looked at her and said, "Why, Barbara Walters." And maybe I should have added, "Do you?"
Now, in your book, you talk about, you said you were a good mother. Were you also a good wife, did you think? You had 4 marriages. But within the frame of the marriage...
I think so. I really love being a wife. And it's one of the really sadnesses of my life that sort of, no, it didn't work out for now, you know? No, the enemy was fame. And beforehand, I think my husband, it sort of embarrasses me to say my husband's, I must say. I should be able to say my husband, but I can't.
This day and age, though, you say my husband's.
Yeah, my husband's really believed, I think, and I really believed loved me, and really thought that the fame would not bother them. But, oh, it's very rough. It's very, very rough, too. And there's no way you can sort of protect a man from this. When the head waiter calls your husband Mr. Davis, and it's all embarrassing. So that was the enemy, fame, I really think.
Would you have had it, looking back at your life now, which has been incredibly successful and still is, you just completed a picture of my good friend, Vincent Price, who adores you, by the way.
Oh, well, he's wonderful in it, yes.
Oh, and he says you're wonderful.
We were all freezing to death for 10 weeks on an island in Casco Bay, in Maine. It's a wonder we're still alive, but we are.
But looking back, what would you change if you could change anything?
Well, I really feel I would not change. I was an incredibly lucky person. Won the top spot in my career. Was fortunate enough at a very late age to have a child, and the career was made so I could devote myself to children. Eventually adopted 2 other children. No, I don't think I would do anything differently.
Isn't that wonderful to be able to sit here and say that?
I don't think I would. No.
You know how blessed you are? That's wonderful.
Yes, I feel I am an indeed fortunate woman, I must say.
We'll do a commercial and we'll talk some more. Oh, all
right.
I'll be right back with more of Bette Davis. Talking with Catherine and Bette Davis. Now, you really wrote the book. Show them.
Catherine wrote by hand every foot of this book as we went along. And it's really quite a terrific contribution. Of course, we're not going to say that if she could have been known a typewriter, that it would have been easier for her. But anyway, the contribution was enormous since she could not type.
You said things...
beautiful.
In the book.
Is beautiful.
In the book, you did wonderful things. My father was a doctor, and a wonderfully caring doctor.
Oh, yes.
And I found when my husband was ill that you find people are not quite so caring these days.
No, they aren't very caring at all. But of course...
And you talked about that.
But of course, being a VIP, you think would, means sort of something. It's a big, big handicap. Number one, it's an embarrassment to you after something like that happening to look the way you must look and realize that people who see you think of you as you looked on the screen. It was very, very, very embarrassing. It really is.
But didn't they try to push you out of your room?
Oh, that is, of course, heaven. a very, who was a wealthy man who gave $10 million to the New York Hospital? What?
New Yorkers.
Yeah, New Yorkers gave $10 million to the New York Hospital for the complete security of 2 hospital rooms he could use at any time. Well, I was in one of them. Mrs. Nixon was across the hall in another one. My great surgeon friend, Stanley Behrman, was a great friend of Nyorka's. And a nephew or somebody had hurt himself very badly in Italy, and he called up Stanley Behrman. And the doctors kept saying, oh, you can go home today. You can go home today. Well, frankly, one does know oneself when one is well enough to go home. And Nyorka said to Stanley, when are you going to get that goddamn actress friend of yours out of that room? I didn't find this out till later, as a matter of fact. I was very puzzled that maybe I hadn't paid my bill. With the way they were trying to get rid of me, I thought, this is very odd. I mustn't go till I feel like it. But that was why they were doing it.
Did you get a chance to meet Mrs. Nixon? Did you go across and say hello?
Mr. Nixon we saw in the hall. Catherine did. I think you went and talked to him, didn't you?
Yes.
And I had very many flowers, and I sent some flowers over to Mrs. Nixon. And they were returned by a security guard next day saying, Mrs. Nixon is allergic to flowers. And I decided that probably Mr. Nixon, when he saw the name and knew what a wild Democrat I was, that he wasn't so pleased to have my flowers in. But then a nurse one day came into my room, right, and said, good morning, Mrs. Nixon. I said, Mrs. Nixon is across the hall.
May I ask you, you've played so many different roles, and this is probably a very stupid and very basic question. Is there any one role that you just look back and go, that was my favorite?
Oh, yes, of course. Of course, Doc Victory was a favorite.
Ah.
Doc Victory, now Voyager was certainly a favorite. But you see, I was so lucky. I was given so very, very many. They bought wonderful things for me to do. In later years, of course, what can we say enough about All About Eve? We can't.
Oh.
We just can't.
It reads so brilliantly, too.
But my favorite of sort of later years, of course, was Baby Jane.
Yeah.
I will never forget a remark made by my daughter, Barbara, when she saw me in makeup. She said, Mother, now you have just gone too far.
Melissa says that every morning. Will you come back again, please, and visit? We'll be right back with Joe Below at the Special Interest. And I know you have to leave, so thank you so much. Bette Davis.